You mentioned the environment and the fifth freedom flight and transit, and to be honest, that's something I really don't know a lot about. Yes, it's something I'm keen to learn about. I've made a note of it here, so I cannot offer you a comment until I have enough information on that, which I hopefully will get over the coming weeks and so on, as I read myself properly and fully into my new role as non-executive chair, which is your second question. The difference between non-exec and executive chair. The primary difference, as I see it, between non-exec and executive chair is that a non-executive is very, very much, it's a part-time role. It's obviously chairing, primary role is chairing board meetings, of which there's anything between probably 8 to 10 board meetings a year, each lasting could be 2 to 3 hours, sometimes longer. And the executive chair it's a full-time role. That's primarily it. The difference then between, you asked the question about my read on it, difference between the chair and the CEO and the management team, and you mentioned strategic direction. In my view, it's the board. It's actually not the chair. The chair facilitates the board. The board creates the vision and works on the strategy with the management team. And to me, fundamentally, strategy is very simple, because you mentioned the term strategic direction. Strategic direction is, you start off knowing where you're at. Where are we at now? And totally honest, no sort of bias around, this is where we're at now. And then you say, where do you want to get to? And strategy is the bridge you build between where you're at now and where you want to get to. And it's the board's role, in my view, to work with the management team in creating a realistic, effective strategy, in creating it. It's the management's team to execute on the strategy. So management are primarily in execution mode. The board is not necessarily in execution mode. And all of the board, including me, are non-executive. There's a lot of other things going on in their lives, so there are. As is the situation, I think, with most, if not all, state boards. So, to me, that's the difference, and the role of the board versus the role of the executive. Antigen testing, I have down as the third question, and an alternative PCR, absolutely. I can't understand, for the life of me, why we've been dragging our heels behind the norm that we have in the EU and in other countries in relation to testing. And I've actually watched, I watched parts and some of the programs and stuff that you've had here in relation to that, and people that you've brought in here. And I remember at one stage, is it Professor Ryan, and I'm subject to correction on this, yeah, was in here and speaking about airlines, and was saying, yeah, we don't have a real issue with airlines, so we don't. And I remember raising that on an interview I did on one of the radio stations, because the air filtration in an airplane is the same air filtration, similar air filtration that you have in an operating theatre. It's of that standard, an incredibly high standard. Yeah, was it? Yeah, I can't remember the details.
It wasn't as the risks weren't as high.
Exactly, the risks aren't as high. So I can't understand why we're not using a simple, effective PCR test, particularly now with the numbers of people that have been vaccinated. Like the logic escapes me. Maybe I'm missing something. Number 4, no buses to Dublin Airport. And I was thinking to myself, Jesus, I wouldn't know that, because I haven't been in Dublin Airport in a long, long time. So I've been cocooned in Connemara, which is a great place to be cocooned in, by the way. But, and there was a bus between Shannon and Dublin, and who funded it? And I haven't a clue. But I'll make an inquiry.
I think that would be a very interesting discussion with Dalton Phillips of the DA. I think it's something maybe that could just, it would be nice to know the facts, I suppose.
Like, it'd be no harm, and thank you for raising it, because it's something I hadn't a clue about. Yeah. But in the first instance, Chair, I might raise it with maybe the CEO of Shannon Airport to see if she's aware of it, and we'll probably take it from there.
Yeah, absolutely.
The fifth question I have is the Heathrow slots and the risk of losing Heathrow slots. Yeah, I'd be concerned about that. I definitely would be concerned about that. maybe it's wishful thinking on my part, but I don't think it's going to happen, because as I mentioned earlier, the number of passengers in and out of the UK from Shannon was in the region of 600,000, and the number of passengers in and out of Heathrow was 268,000 in 2019. Yeah. And that's a fair number of passengers, and any airline should be able to make a return on that, in my view, if they've got a reasonably decent cost structure. So I would be very, very hopeful that we would get Shannon back in, but there is a risk of losing it. Yes, you are right.
But you'd obviously, if the routes were if those 3 Heathrow routes, morning, in the evening to return during the day, they were up and running and they were flying and they were making money.
Absolutely.
Obviously.
They were. You're right, Chair. My understanding is that they were profitable for Airlingus when they were doing them. So
that's the key.
That's the key. I don't see any reason why they wouldn't come back. And if we could incentivise them, as was mentioned earlier, it's going to help make the decision easier and get them back faster and grow faster and support Shannon faster. And the Exchequer, the owners of Shannon, which is you and me and all of us, I believe we're going to get a return on our investment very, very quickly. I think it's a no-brainer, to be honest. And the 6th question, I've answered 5.
No, I think, well, the 5th freedom one was an environmental, were 2 separate ones.
Oh, sorry, yeah.
And the strategic direction was a slightly different one to the non-executive chair. But on that issue, if I could just ask a follow-up, I mean, are there state boards where there are executive chairs as opposed to non-executive ones, or executive directors as opposed to non-executive ones? And do you think that needs to be considered, given the scale of the challenge that Shannon faces at the moment?
Yeah, I'm not aware of whether there are exec chairs of boards. I genuinely don't know. It would be kind of worth sending a letter to see if that is the situation. I actually think we're in a very, very particular situation now in relation to aviation. And I really think, regardless of who the person is, I really think that an executive chair is critical for Shannon Airport, quite frankly, in the short to medium, not long term, but in the short term, because where we find ourselves in. Shannon had 1.7 million passengers in 2019. Last year they had about 360,000 passengers, 20%. So if we go back to what I'm putting my name on the table for, saying we're going to do our best to get back to that stage, we have to multiply the passenger numbers 4-fold, 400%, to go back to those figures. That's a serious challenge and not easy. So I and we will need your help 100% to help us get there.